Bucknutters, welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, March 22nd, 2017. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, I know you're playing hurt today. You're a little under the weather. I appreciate you joining me this morning. We had a chance to interview Ryan Day for the first time yesterday, Ohio State's new quarterbacks coach. I'm very impressed with him. He's one of those guys where you interview him and you feel like he gets it. You know, you feel like you learn a lot when you talk to Ryan Day. It reminded me a little bit of Tom Herman. Not that they're the same type of guy, but when you talk to them, you learn a lot. Whereas when I would interview Tim Beck, I'd walk away thinking I didn't learn anything there. A lot of coach speak, a lot of BS. So I was really impressed with Ryan Day, and he's really impressed with JT Barrett. I know that's very divisive among fans right now, but he really seems high on JT Barrett. One thing I did take away back is he said JT really needs to work on his footwork. He kept coming back to footwork. But he does seem very high on JT Barrett. Just your thoughts on Ryan Day's comments on JT Barrett, specifically the footwork.
Well, that's what I've been yelling about for a year, right? I mean, let's be honest here. JT Barrett didn't really get any QB coaching the last 2 years. I mean, the coaching that Tim Beck gave him could be using Dr. Evil Fingers when you call it coaching. The truth of the matter is that JT Barrett in 2014 had excellent footwork, right? He was always over his feet. He stepped into his throws. He always threw extremely accurately because his footwork was so good. But when he broke his ankle at the end of the year, he ended up rehabilitating himself and getting into the swing of things without having a really strong hand coaching him when it comes to keeping his fundamentals in line. So he developed a bunch of bad habits between not getting to start, between trying to fight his way into the rotation, between not getting any coaching from Tim Beck. There's a whole bunch of things that went wrong for JT that he sort of persevered through to be as successful as he was, despite of the lack of coaching and despite the fact that he got himself into bad habits coming off his injury. Ryan Day gets it. Ryan Day is going to look at JT's feet just like we look at his feet and go, dude, what? All right? I mean, let's be real honest here. If you want to know how Tim Beck coaches quarterbacks and their footwork, go watch videos of Taylor Martinez at Nebraska. It's unreal terrible. So a guy like Day coming in and getting JT's footwork correct is going to make a night and day difference for JT Barrett, who I agree with Ryan Day. I've been on Team JT. I wrote a bucket of bullets entirely defending JT Barrett. Wait until you see what happens when he's had good, strong coaching for 6 months from a coach like Day and in an offense that is ran by a guy who actually knows how to run an offense like Kevin Wilson. Night and day from last year. And I'm really excited to have Ryan Day there, and no pun intended with the night and day comment.
Tim Beck would be night in that equation. Night and day.
Yeah, dark night of 0 points.
I want to talk about what Ryan Day said about what was wrong with the passing attack last year. Even though he wasn't here, he's watched all the video, and he was asked, what do you think was wrong with the passing game last year? What was the biggest thing that was wrong with it? And he said there wasn't one thing. But reading between the lines, I could tell that I thought his biggest reason for the woes of the passing game was lack of protection. He mentioned it like 3 different times. It was the first thing out of his mouth. He did mention JT has to get better. He talked about his footwork again. He talked a lot about timing and spacing with Barrett and the receivers, but he came back to protection. So he knows Barrett needs to improve. He knows the receivers need to improve, but reading between the lines, it sounds like Ryan Day thinks, this is just me putting words in his mouth, but it was my vibe that he thinks the biggest issue with Ohio State last year was lack of pass protection.
Well, gee, it's like you watched the videos and saw Isaiah Prince getting turnstile the whole season, too. Exactly what we were saying the whole year. I like this guy more and more the more I hear of him. I mean, let's be real. Like, anybody with eyeballs could tell that was the biggest issue. That was the worst right tackle performance we've had at Ohio State in a very long time. And now the other guys, Jamarco Jones quietly had an exceptional season. The other guys were solid, not great inside. Michael Jordan was a true freshman. I mean, he's going to make some mistakes, and he did. But, the bottom line is Ryan Day is completely correct. Quarterbacks, when they're comfortable in the pocket, make better decisions and make more confident throws. And when you're JT Barrett and you're expecting to get murdered from the right side every play, it's not a surprise that you're going to be rushing things and your footwork's going to get sloppier, too. It's one of the many things that came together for this offense to be as bad as it was last year. And so, yeah, he's absolutely, what does Ryan Day said here? He said, JT Barrett's footwork has been no good. The offensive line was not really great, and the receivers really didn't run exciting routes. Well, all those things are true. If he's going to come around and tell me next that the wrong guys were in the receiver rotation next year, I might hug him and just say, yes, I have nothing more to teach you.
He also talked about the backup quarterbacks. As I interjected in, I wanted to know about the backup quarterbacks. People were asking so many questions about the NFL and how Ohio State compares to the NFL. We're like 10 minutes into the interview. I'm like, we can talk about Joe Burrow or Dwayne Haskins. So finally got my questions in about those guys. I asked about Burrow, Haskins, Martell. Again, reading between the lines, I think he is extremely high on Joe Burrow, Ryan Day that is. I mean, he just gushed about Joe Burrow. He said very nice things about Dwayne Haskins, too. He said Tate Martell's kind of feeling his way, kind of indicated he'd probably redshirt. Talked about Dwayne Haskins' talent, but when he talked about Joe Burrow, his eyes lit up. He talked about how he does it all. He can do everything. That's not a big surprise to me because I've been high on Joe Burrow, too, but I've been high on Dwayne Haskins as well. But it was interesting to me to hear Ryan Day speak so highly of Joe Burrow, Bax.
Yeah, and also Joe Burrow was one of the guys who was wearing the black non-contact uniforms in practice, something Haskins wasn't. So it kind of tells you the pecking order. But I agree with you. I think a lot of people heard, oh, my gosh, Haskins looks just like Deshaun Watson in bowl practice. Wow, that's a great sign. He should start. No, that's insane. That's asinine, actually. He's barely had any time in the system. I mean, he's just getting into his second full year in the system here. So we don't know how good Haskins is or isn't going to be. What we know is that Joe Burrow, every opportunity we've seen him in, he has executed the offense really well. He has a skill set that fits this offense extremely well. Tom Herman called him the next Alex Smith for Urban Meyer. That's not gone away, folks. Right, just because the new guy in recruiting is more exciting, or one of the other guys, quote unquote, looked awesome in practice. How many times have we heard somebody looked awesome in practice and never saw it in a game? Joe Burrow right now, to me, is extremely well prepared to be JT Barrett's backup this year, and he could step in and win a lot of football games if something happened to JT. So, again, Ryan Day, everything you hear from him is very nice to hear because it doesn't seem like he's on the overreaction wagon. It seems like he's on the analysis wagon, and that's a good thing whenever you have a quarterbacks coach who's coaching these guys. JT Barrett is going to be way better this year with this guy's tutelage, but Joe Burrow is already very good, and that's a very good thing for Ohio State because it's not like in past years where your backup quarterback was somebody when they came on the field, you began to panic. If Joe Burrow has to play, it's going to be just like it was when Kenny Gayton came. It's smooth jazz and lots of points.
If anyone missed it, I posted a couple stories yesterday where I embedded the full video interview with Ryan Day. It's 15 minutes long, so if anybody hasn't seen it, check out one of the stories, and it's embedded in one of the Ryan Day stories. There's one on Ryan Day talking about Barrett, and there's one on Ryan Day talking about the younger quarterbacks, Burrow, Haskins, and Martell. So, again, if you haven't seen that video, make sure you check it out. It's very interesting, and you really get to know Ryan Day. He even talks about how he wants to be in Columbus for a while. He wants to stay at Ohio State for a while. I really feel like he wants to be the offensive coordinator of the future whenever Kevin Wilson moves on to be a head coach somewhere. Maybe in 3 years, I think Ryan Day I think he wants to be the next offensive coordinator at Ohio State, so I invite everybody to watch that. Hey, real quick before I let you go back, before you get back to taking some sick medicine or whatever you're taking, we had a chance to talk to Bill Davis for the first time. What's that?
Ginger ale and soup, man.
Ginger ale and soup, going old school on me. I like that. All natural. Had a chance to interview Bill Davis for the first time yesterday, the new linebackers coach. Again, he's very excited about the talent that he's inherited. I want to ask you specifically about Chris Worley at middle linebacker. That seems to be an interesting topic. This is a guy that arrived at Ohio State 190 pounds. They've bulked him up all the way to 225. They want to get him up to 230 now. They're moving him to middle linebacker. Are you bullish on that move? Do you think his body can stand up there, or are you a little worried about Chris Worley being the starting middle linebacker?
I see it as kind of risky. I think their thought process was, we want Worley as the guy who's calling the defense. They see him as the very clear heir to Raekwon when it comes to getting everybody lined up and getting the defense in place and making sure everybody's ready to play on any given play. One of the best things about Raekwon McMillan, one of the reasons he may slip into the first round of the NFL draft this year was pre-snap, the guy was as impeccable as it got, getting his teammates ready to go. And I think they see that same trait in Worley. And I think they wanted him to move to middle linebacker so he'd be better able to do that. But, man, I agree with you. I worry that he's too small to play middle linebacker. And now, I know we've had success with some smaller guys at Ohio State. Remember, Brian Roll was not a big guy. And he played an excellent couple of years of linebacker for Ohio State. I mean, he played in the Rose Bowl and won the Rose Bowl as a starting middle linebacker at Ohio State. But, to me, I think they are trying to put a little bit of a square peg into a round hole with Worley at this point, because Worley is a very good outside linebacker. And I also think they're looking at it saying, well, we want to get Booker on the field with Baker and Worley. Those are our three best, period. And we're just going to play our three best, period. But the one who they would be going into middle linebacker in a normal sense, would have been Dante Booker had he not been hurt, right? But so he hasn't been on the field, so I think they want that experience and that veteran presence in the middle, and we're just going to have to see how well Worley holds up. I mean, it may be a situation where when they're more comfortable with Booker, middle linebacker, they swap the two, but I just don't see Worley being big enough to hold up in a really pounding running game. I mean, how is he going to do in the trenches in the middle against Saquon Barkley? And that's going to be a big question right there. So I think that they're trying to take his knowledge of the defense and put him dead center in the middle of the group and be that quarterback of the defense on the field. And we're just going to have to see physically if it works or not.
Great stuff as always from the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. You can catch his column every Sunday. It is The Bucket. He came strong today as always, even though he's playing hurt. Thank you very much, Bax, and thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it and hope you have a great day. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.